On today's video, I'm going to give you guys some tips for doing some free lunging with your horse, including the #1 mistake that people often make when they're free lunging their horses. So I've got 3 horses in here with me that I already let kind of run around a little bit by themselves. They are 3 horses that are from the same field. So that's super important that if you're going to be doing multiple horses at a time, you don't want fights breaking out. So it's best if they're from the same field or they know each other, or if it's going to be new horses that don't know each other, then usually just do 2 horses and of the same kind of energy level. So the horses that I have in here, this is Secret. So Secret's my little weanling. She's actually a buckskin thoroughbred, which you can kind of tell on her face. She's a little bit lighter, and I'm told that as she gets a little bit older, she'll lighten up and her color will kind of change a little bit. But this is little Secret, who you guys met when I took her down to, I picked her up on my way down to try on Equestrian Center for a demo down there. And then in the back over here we have the bay thoroughbred is Fairly. Fairly Obvious, who's my 2-year-old, soon to be 3-year-old thoroughbred for this year's makeover. And then the little Grulo that's itching her shoulder right now, that is Kalila. So she's my little 5-year-old paint. So these guys are all from the same field. And the first thing I did was just let them kind of run around in here a little bit themselves. And even when you look at my arena, and there's always a bunch of stuff in my arena, there's some jumps set up and there's pedestals and things. But what's super important about the safety piece is there's nothing that they can get caught on. The horses aren't wearing halters, they aren't wearing blankets, so they're not wearing anything on themselves that can get caught in anything. And there's lots of space around the object. So if you kind of look at what's set up here, it's very easy for the horses to go around what's in here. If you're going to have a pile of poles like we do here, it's best to have that in the center of the arena because the horses are unlikely to go over it. And I've left the track of my arena clear. Oh, I've got 2 horses laying down. I'm going to see if I can go over and give Fairly a cookie before she gets up. Good girl, Fairly. Yes. Good girl. Oh, and there goes Secret. So one of my other tips for you guys is that this is the #1 easiest way to teach your horse to lay down. So when I get asked all the time about laying horses down, and it's by far the easiest thing if you can set it up kind of like this where the horse lays down and you give them a reward and they understand that laying down is a good thing. So this was the first time I did that for Secret and Fairly, and you can kind of see that when I did that, they were kind of apprehensive and they weren't really sure what I was going to do, so they kind of got up. But then I still gave them their treat, so hopefully the next time they go to lay down and I go to approach them with a treat, hopefully they're going to understand what I'm doing. And if we do this enough times, then they'll get the message that laying down is a good thing. And then when I go on to ask them to actually lay down on cue, they'll have a better idea of what I'm going after. So that's another little tip, is that you can use free lunging as an opportunity to teach your horse to lay down. So I've been letting them wander around a little bit. Another little safety tip is going to be that you always stand in the middle of the arena. You never want to get yourself caught against a wall, because when the horses get going sometimes they start to like kick up their heels a little bit, and you want to make sure that you don't get yourself in a position where you're going to get trapped against the wall or potentially get kicked at. Usually they're not kicking on purpose, they're just kind of kicking up their heels and having fun. But either way, you want to make sure that you stay safe. So they were running around a little bit on their own, and now I'm going to ask them to run, start to move a little bit. So I want to make sure that I don't use too much pressure, that they run like idiots, because I don't want anybody getting hurt. So I'm just going to ask for a trot. And when you've got multiple horses like this, and if you take a look, they're all in different spots. We've got Fairly, who's up in this corner over here, We've got Secret, who's hanging out in the middle. We've got Kalila, who's way down at the end there, checking herself out in the mirror. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna focus on one horse at a time. So I'm gonna start with Fairly because she's the most energetic horse in the bunch. And by getting her going, might get the other horses interested. And after Fairly gets going, then I'm gonna focus on Kalila. So I'm only gonna focus my attention on one horse at a time. And I'm gonna ask for trot if they canners, it's not the end of the world. And then I'm going to basically focus on direction, making sure that we get one direction at a time.
So here we go with a little look at the horses just running around doing their own thing. So I wanted you guys to see what the horses did naturally on their own when I let them loose in the arena. You can definitely see that Fairly is the most energetic one in the bunch, but with her getting going, it kind of gets Kalila and the other ones going, and they start running around. And you can see there's nobody in the arena. They're not being chased whatsoever, and this is just kind of what they're doing on their own accord. So they kind of run all over the place. They go in different directions. They go pretty fast, but they kind of take care of themselves. And you can see Fairly there's trying to go and get Kalila to get her excited and get her going. But what I want you to notice as you're watching the horses run around is I want you to watch their expressions. So I want you to notice if they put their tail up like warning, warning, or if they start snorting or anything like that. And you can see their tails are out and they're running around. But notice how the tails are not straight up in the air. So this is going to come into play when I talk about my number one tip for when you're free running your horse. One thing that you want to avoid is typically when the horse has their tail straight up in the air, like they're standing still with their tail straight up in the air. Try to say that 10 times fast. And they start snorting. That usually means like warning, warning, this is dangerous, or I'm worried, or I'm scared. It's usually not a good sign. So if you are chasing your horse and running them around to the point that they do that, it's not a good sign. Now, when you're watching these horses run around here, you can see their tails are out, and that's just because that's a natural thing for the horse to do when they're running around and they're playing, but it's not straight up in the air like a warning sign. So think of it kind of like a deer. When a deer is scared, which is another type of prey animal, their tail goes straight up. It's not all that different for horses. So it's something that we definitely want to keep in mind that we want to avoid. So if you look at the postures of these horses when they were standing still, their tails were relaxed and they were down. So now here's looking forward to me starting to ask them to move around. So they ran around a bunch themselves, and you guys listened to me talk for a little bit. And then now I'm going and interacting with my horses. So I'm starting with Fairly, where I got her going. And then now I'm focusing my attention on Kalila to ask her to go. Now I'm going to ask her to go out and around. And then what I'm looking for is to maintain some sort of type of direction. But if I can kind of get them into a clump, then I can direct them a little bit easier. So you'll notice that I have a little stick with me, and that's just so I can help make my energy a little bit bigger and I can stay further away. So notice how if I want the horses to go to the left, my stick stays in my right hand. So I make it very clear to the horses that the door to the left is open because there's no stick in the way, there's no body in the way. It's a free open door for them to go. And then they kind of all go to different spots, and that's okay. And so I ask them to move around a little bit, but I don't want to scare them, so then I call them back in. So that's me calling Fairly back in, and I offer her a little reward. And this is my big tip to help make sure that you don't end up scaring your horse, because people get excited when they're watching their horses run around and they can start chasing them. And horses can get scared, and it can be what was supposed to be a fun and playful thing for your horse to do can turn into something that actually makes your horse scared of you. And we don't really want that. So I ask my horses to come towards me, and then I have them do a little hand touch, and then I offer them a reward because I want to make sure that they understand that I'm asking you to move around, but I want you to be able to come back to me. And you don't have to have an interest in doing liberty work or doing a lot of this type of stuff with your horses, but if you just use the basic concept of, ask your horse to go around a little bit and then ask them to check in and greet you and hang out with you for a second, and then you can send them back out again, you're going to have a lot better relationship and not upset your horse in the same way as if you just have your horse run, 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 run. And I have this memory from when I was a kid with my first horse. I got my first horse when I was 13 years old. His name was Mission. He was a bay quarter horse gelding. And we would let them free running the arena every so often to get their friskies out. And I remember we would run them and they would like snort and put their tails up in the air. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder what that means. But the farm that I was at didn't really teach horse psychology and didn't really understand a lot of the horse behaviors other than, the really common ones like pinning ears and stuff like that. So they didn't know. They didn't know the answer. So I just kind of ignored it, and that's kind of how it went for a while. And it wasn't until later when I realized, oh shoot, like that's actually a horse scared. And I'm like, great. So I was basically running my horse until he was scared and really, upsetting him. And so now when I'm working with my horses, like, yeah, I want them to run around and I want to get their friskies out and I want to let them move, but I want to make sure I have this time that I'm doing right here where I invite them in and we have a few scratches and I just kind of hang out with them a little bit too. It doesn't add that much more time to the session, but it helps make sure that my horses know that I'm nothing to be feared and that coming into the arena doesn't mean you have to run around like a crazy horse. You can if you want to when we're doing these free run sessions, but I don't want my horses having anxiety when they come into the ring. So here's another little look. You can see when I send Fairly out to the right, notice my stick is now in my left hand. So the door was very much open to the right. So it makes it very clear to the horses that they need to go to the right. So you want to make sure that you're not cutting off that side of the arena at all, that it's completely open for the horses, and then you can get them going to the right. And if you're not really sure what I'm talking about in terms of drive lines or having that space open, I recommend you hop onto my website, harmonyhorsemanship.ca/welcome, and on that page you'll find my free video series. And there's 3 videos in the video series that's free that you can sign up for, and one of them is about drive lines and quadrants and sort of the importance of that passive leadership piece. And that's really huge. And that's what I'm using here when I ask my horses to go out to the right or the left, is I'm using my knowledge of drive lines to make sure that I set it up that the horse has space to go and I'm not giving them conflicting signals. So I asked Fairly to come over to me first. I've been doing liberty work with her, so she's pretty quick to draw up. And then it's interesting that as soon as I turn my focus to secret, she totally just pieces out. But that's okay because I'm not focusing on liberty work here. I just want to make sure I have those little check-in pieces. And as I'm doing this and I'm going between the different horses, I'm also being aware and I'm observing the horses to kind of get a feel for, what are you doing? How energetic are you? And so Fairly went trotting away when I took my attention over to Secret. So that tells me that she's still got a little bit of beans to burn. Whereas Secret is just following me at the walk. And you can see Kalila's got a very slow walk to her. So that's letting me know that these guys are starting to feel like they don't really need to move a whole lot more. So after we finished up with that, I just kind of hang out with them and spend a little bit of time giving them some more scratches and stuff. I think this time hanging out with them is super important to make sure you can finish your session like this, so that way they're ending with good feelings towards us and nothing scared whatsoever. Look at that little face. Come on, seriously, is that not adorable? Yeah, so definitely some scratches to finish with.
So I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and my number 1 tip, make sure that you can always finish a free running session where your horses are willing and able to hang out with you. They're not scared of you, because even though we're letting them exercise and have a good time, it's super important that they trust you, they want to be around you. So I hope you guys will like this video, subscribe to this channel if you aren't already, and let me know in the comments what you thought about seeing these little guys play around and my tips for free running. Alright, thanks for watching guys, and we'll see you later.